There we go.
Good morning, Diane. How are you?
I'm good, Savannah. How are you doing this morning?
Okay. And thank you for participating.
My pleasure. I'm really excited about this project, actually.
Oh, great. So are we. This has been a few months working on this. Before I start asking you some of the more detailed questions, let me allow you a chance to introduce yourself and, state the type of artwork that you do.
Well, my name is Dianne Smith. I am a New York-based Harlem artist. I'm a painter, sculptor, and installation artist, predominantly working in three-dimensional form right now, working with everyday materials, doing assemblages, and also in installations, the assemblages are made out of everyday materials as well.
Okay, great. So I wanted to focus on Patrick's work, Westward Bound, and my first question is that portraits, as you know, they go back to Greek Roman times, and then there are sculptures that individuals would request for themselves that goes even further back, even to Egyptian times, and over those centuries, usually just heads of states were the persons who would have their portraits done because they were wealthy enough to have them done. So I wanted to ask, what has Patrick's portraits, what have they done for Africans across the diaspora? Because that is his specialty, and I wanted people to understand that in historical context, but also artistically.
Well, I think I can answer that question sort of two-part as we talk about Africans globally, but specifically to the African Burial Ground Project as well. I think in both instances, this idea of creating iconic images of people from the diaspora is important, particularly as we look throughout history at how images are projected of people of color. This is particularly important. I think that there's a stoicism that comes through in his images of the people of color throughout the diaspora that's particularly important. And these images, although they are African people, I think they speak to the fact that they're representative of people of color, Black and brown people across the globe.
Yes.
I think that how he's captured the essence of the people he has created likenesses of, from their facial features and structure to perhaps as a viewer using your imagination to understand maybe the life of that person, where they've come from, who their ancestry is. How are you connected to that image from an ancestral, spiritual, cultural perspective? I think that his images are important. And then as it relates specifically to the African Burial Ground Project, having found these remains these few years ago, and understanding that there are potential faces that go to these images, they're not just about remains. They were people with souls, with feelings, with features, with likes and dislikes, with pain, with suffering. I think that, again, and dignity and intelligence and beauty. And I think that his images, he has captured that. That's my my thought on that. And that is why the Greek and Romans would have, the wealthy would have wanted their portraits done. Two-dimensional and three-dimensional form to capture their stoicism, their beauty, their elegance, their richness. So
I think that was great how you focused on features, because the features in a lot of the works are so prominent. You can see yourself in it. The high cheekbones, the thick lips, looking at the small and large eyes. If you're a person that knows nothing about Africa or have never been there, but you are of that ancestry, you can identify with those images just on the features alone.
Absolutely. There's some characteristics in those features that you can look at your family member. It may look like Aunt so-and-so, resemble cousin so-and-so. They're very real to the people that we encounter daily as we move through a city like New York, particularly living in a community like Harlem, where there's an influx of Africans, and watching how Africans and African Americans are now melding and blending in this community. I think it's reflective of that.
I also like the fact that in his portraits, he doesn't take you back in time. He kind of deals with the present. So therefore, even the outerwear of these individuals you can identify with, and it's still very royal looking. So therefore, you can find that sort of richness and importance in his work, and you can therefore refer to older portraits of, from the Baroque period, the Renaissance period, and now you connect with all of those other art periods, and you could find the humanity that's in there.
Well, that's the thing about capturing a brilliant portrait of someone. It's timeless. And realize that beauty and elegance and richness and intelligence that come through a portrait does not have a time span. And that's what's also important about these portraits. It speaks to history. I think that history is very rooted in those images. I can make connections historically. I can think back about ancestral legacy in looking at those portraits. But again, from a very contemporary perspective, I can see those people today. Yes. And that's what's important. It creates this sort of sustainable legacy, which is important.
That's great. My next question is the use of red and blue in his works. I mean, they're very prominent in Patrick's work. And I just wanted to ask you if you felt those particular colors were symbolic.
I think in a way, I immediately go and think about colonization when I think about red and blue. And we can also incorporate white because the images are on white surface. So we're dealing with the colors of red, white, and blue. And when I think of colonization, whether from the British perspective or the U.S. perspective, I think red, white, and blue. Those were the things that are implanted in their cultural imprints. And I think in that way it's symbolic. Like these people were here, and these are the imprints of them being here. What are the ramifications of colonization? How does that now impact a society? That is a historical event, but how does it continue to impact the today as it relates to Black and brown people globally?
So therefore, it broadens the conversation, and therefore there's a whole political aspect now to his work that goes beyond just looking at portraits.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I perceive it, not just from an artist's perspective, but also as a viewer of art, a consistent viewer of art, and just how I process material. I look at the nuances of a work and begin to take it apart based on what I bring to the work of art. What is my context? And my context tells me that there is some connection between power structure as it relates to Black and brown people, and that's how he has brought that up in his work. It represents this idea of power, dominance, and all of those things.
Wow, that's fantastic. My last question to you is really about you. What types of works are you hoping to produce in 2012? And what are some of those issues or aesthetics that you wish to explore?
Well, I'm currently working on a solo show that's due to open up in Martinsville, Virginia. January 13th is the opening. It's a solo show. It's entitled Surface and Sounds. And it's going to contain not just my sculptural pieces, my assemblages, but it's going to be a mixture of paintings, assemblages, and installation. And the work will be talking, as it says, surface and sounds. I'll be dealing with the fact that I'm working with these materials. And did I say surface and sound? Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, surface and souls. I'm working on a sound piece also, so that's been very prominent in my mind. Mm-hmm. So forgive me. Surface and soul. surface, just dealing with the aesthetic. What do you see? Not just texture, but the aesthetic, the beauty of the piece, but behind the piece, because the pieces are wrapped so intensely. Excuse me. What's behind it? What's inside? What's the soul of the artwork? What is the message? Similarly, you just talked about the red and blue found in Patrick's piece. Mm-hmm. What's the soul behind the red and the blue? Same with this show. And further than that, I am working on my thesis, which is Class Trash Consumption and the Politics of Race. And I'm looking at the Harlem community, as I did last year, and the changes as it relates to gentrification, but also looking at this from a global perspective, making a comparison between a community like Harlem and Haiti. For example, Port-au-Prince and Jacmel, what are the similarities? What are the differences as it affects people of color globally?
Well, thank you so much, Dianne. We really appreciate this opportunity, and we look forward to seeing you come down to the Buried Ground to see the installation.
I will. I had the pleasure of seeing it last year, and I'm looking forward to seeing it in the very near future.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Savona. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Bye-bye.